Hey guys, sorry for me not making any videos in the past, well, while, but I've pretty much been busy with work and classes and such. But now, I'm gonna be talking about the newest video game, and yes, I know, I hear you guys, but technically this video game is supposed to be historically accurate to the purpose, and that would be Kingdom Come Deliverance. Now, this is probably one of the coolest type of medieval games I probably ever played. Though I do have some problems with this game. One is the lag and the glitching and a lot of other problems. As well, there's also a secondary problem of which there are a couple of things missing in this. But I'll get to that later. Now, as Skyrim, Metatron, and including Shad from Shadiversary have talked about this game, the game is good, but it glitches out, and as well the wait time for this is a pain in the ass. In which, yeah, I can understand that. But now, the thing I love about this, it's accurate to the point when it comes to the armor, and as well the archery, and as well even the weapons. Which, that also brings me to another thing. When it comes to the weapons, we see maces, we see warhammers, we see swords, and this is 1403. Now, technically there are supposed to be hand cannons at this point in time, but we don't see them. Now, I can understand that they don't put it in here because that's kind of cheating and stuff. I can understand that. But, as well, there are problems of there might also be a problem about that because technically with this thing would go anywhere when it comes to the ball. But I'm kind of wondering why didn't they put like crossbows in this when technically that could have worked. But as well, there are some things in here that are kind of weird in this that don't make any sense. Especially if you go to one of the last missions of the game, technically the person states that they don't have any gunpowder. This is actually inaccurate. But as well, that also brings me to another thing. The person that technically the inventor of the weapons and stuff like that, the man who makes a trebuchet, technically he describes of a type of cannon or siege weapon that fires a giant metal arrow. And this is actually kind of the historical version of the early cannonball, or technically the early version of the giant cannons, in which didn't fire a ball from like a cannonball. They actually fired a big giant metal arrow, which actually this is kind of historically accurate. It worked perfectly. It could pierce through the walls. The only problem is it was a lot more time consuming to make an arrowhead than it was to make just a cannonball. But yeah, but that's the only thing. There are also the things when you have to deal with the cumins. Now, if you guys want to know what the hell is a cumin in the first place, well, a cumin is technically what you might call a Hungarian warrior, or technically a type of version of a Mongol. In fact, these type of people are somewhat the same and somewhat different. It's complicated. But as well, what I do also like about this game is how the historically accurate you get with the sword play, you get with the weaponry, in which that also brings me to the warhammers and maces, in which actually makes a point, because technically, if you guys don't know this yet, to take down an opponent, you need it either a lot faster, you need to use an axe, a mace, or a warhammer, which works a lot faster, especially when you're going up against a guy in full plate, which I like that. it makes it a little bit more easier when you're fighting. But yeah, but as I stated, the glitching, there is a massive problem of glitching in there. So yeah. But what I love about it, though, there's also the version of the archery with no sights whatsoever, which, I mean, that is kind of impressive if you kind of think about it. But now, also they even have the pole weapons. Now, technically you can't ride your horse with this, which makes sense. But you can still fast travel, but I think the fast travel is a little, well, you know, a little bit more technically not what we might think of fast travel, but still, it's quite impressive. But yeah, uh, but yeah, it is impressive on how the weaponry works and such, and as well with the swords and so much like that. There's many amounts of sword play and such, in which I love the way in which you had to hold the shield and sword just to protect yourself. In which that's what I do technically during the entire round of the game. I rather use a shield and a sword or warhammer or something because it works out a little bit better, if you ask me. But just from playing the game and finally finishing it, it seems as though there might actually be a Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 just by looking at it. Because technically, if you guys have actually finished it, you can actually tell there might actually be a second one. Especially from if you see the original trailer, which you see a giant field battle in which I didn't see that in the game, which so that means there might actually be another game they might make. So if they do, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 might actually be the badass version, if you ask me. No, don't get me wrong though, it is pretty cool. And as well, I also love the housing. Now the housing, that is impressive on how they got it correct. But as well, the first fight scene we get when you fight against the humans and bandits, that is actually pretty impressive, especially on how you get to choose on which way you're supposed to go. But yeah, it's actually quite impressive. Now though, there are some things that I kind of do like about the humans, don't get me wrong. I like the humans because they kind of remind me of a Viking warrior almost, because they got laminar, they got chainmail, they got technically Viking style helms. Technically they look like the Rus Vikings. In other words, the Russians almost of the Viking era. But yeah. But as well, when it comes to some of the things in here, there are some places you can actually get good armor, which is surprising. But you gotta sometimes use lockpicks. And there are a lot of areas that are hidden agenda areas, which you can't technically get to them at all, which doesn't make any sense. I don't know why. But what I'm kind of wondering, why don't they have crossbows in the first place? Because that would be a lot easier, especially for me. Every time I try using the bow and arrow, I'm like a pain in it. It's like, son of a bitch! It's like I keep on missing the guy 100 times over, which doesn't make any sense at all. But yeah, technically it's kind of impressive on how well they actually made this entire thing. It's like, in fact, if you guys actually ever look also with the unarmed fighting, they also got some good grappling moves in there, which is surprising, come to think of it. But now, technically there are some things I just don't understand about this. Especially like there's like less amount of, because whenever I take a look at the landscape and see as though there's a mill here and something there, or a windmill there and a windmill there and a farmland there, technically there was something stuff like that, but they wouldn't have been that far out. What I mean is, when it comes to the medieval times, this is like medieval Europe, ladies and gentlemen, and technically at this point in time, the landscape wouldn't look like, well, less amount of trees. In fact, technically, forestation was pretty much all over the place. And as well, if you guys have ever walked into the gamekeeper, you would technically, he would technically get mad at you if you end up hunting, say, a deer. Technically, this is actually kind of true. You cannot hunt deer in a medieval times because technically it was outlawed. Because technically that's actually a, well, historically accurate, yes, but at the same time it's a pain in the ass. Now, guys, don't get me wrong at this one though, but I really did not like this one mission, especially when you had to play as the monk. That I really hated, and I mean hated. Don't get me wrong, I'm not like that. It's just the idiotic version on how I'm supposed to get through it. In fact, this is probably one of the most idiotic parts about it, which I really don't understand why. It's kind of like this. When I was playing it, pretty much it was just glitching out for no apparent reason. And this is actually because I'm playing through it. Next thing I know, I end up having a glitch. I thought, well, technically the thing's still playing, so what the hell was the problem? That is until the freaking monk. This is your first warning. This is your second warning. This is your third warning. You're going in the pen. Literally, that's what happened. And I'm doing no wrong here. It's like, you're an ass. Get out of my sight. Technically, if you ask me, it's a lot easier just to go around and kill people. Oh, I'm sorry. This is hard not to say that. But as well, yes, the history about this guy is technically supposed to take place, yada yada yada, blah blah blah, we can already get the point. But as well, if they do come up with a large-scale battle for Kingdom Come Deliverance, which, if you technically look up the term Kingdom Come Deliverance on Google, you can actually see a massive battlefield, in which it's like, perfect, that would actually work. Especially, and as well, there might also be a major siege. We don't know yet. But if they do bring something like that in there, I'll be happy to play it. But now there are some weapons they're missing out on, such as the German Messer, a couple of Faustiums, and other stuff like that. Which also brings me to another thing. When it comes to swords, here's the weird thing. A foot soldier, such as your character that you're playing as, or any of the other foot soldiers who are not knights in particular, would not carry an arming sword. They would technically be carrying either a spear, an axe, or a warhammer, or something like that. But when it comes to swords, they would either carry a falchion, a messer, technically something that screams peasant, not screams medieval knight. Which, yeah. But there are some things I can understand why they did that in order to get approval ratings, whatever. But as well, the armor in this is completely badass, especially with the Brigandine, which I love the Brigandine. I don't know why, I just do. It's just cool. But what I really hate is the visored helmets. Now, don't get me wrong, I know this sounds weird, but technically when it comes to visored helmets, a foot soldier would never use that on the battlefield. Now, if he was on cavalry, such as with the medieval knight, then yes. Foot soldier, not so much. Now, the cleaning mechanism was a pain in the ass to deal with as well, because you have to go to this person just to get it cleaned and such. But yeah, it took me 100 tries just to find out where you can actually do it without paying so much money. But as well, what they got with the medieval, technically when you're doing the hunting scene with Hans, this is what I like about it, especially with the boar. They try to skewer a boar with he tries to skewer a boar with an arrow, thinks it would kill him. It doesn't. That is actually true. Because killing a boar, you gotta hunt it down with spears and dogs. Otherwise, it will not work at all. You would get gored instantly. But as well, there are other forms of kettle helms they didn't have in here, but they might have that in the second version, maybe, hopefully. But yeah, there are a couple of hundreds of things that are missing in this game, which I'm kind of saddened by, but yeah. But if they do end up having a crossbow, I'll be the first one to get the crossbow. But if they do have hand cannons, I want to see hand cannons in the second one. Because that would be pretty badass, because the medieval hand cannon had different forms, but my favorite form was technically the one with a war spike on the bottom, which you can both use as a handle and as a weapon. In which, that thing was a dangerous medieval club with a giant spike on the end, almost like a warhammer, except just with the spike itself. But now there are some things I really don't see in the game as they did show in the trailer for some reason, which is weird. But I guess most of those might actually have been side quests or something like that. But yeah, there are hundreds of places you can go just to get some good armor, some good equipment. But I'm kind of surprised why they didn't have the polearm unit, such as, like, say, a massive pike unit, technically block a way for the enemy soldiers. In fact, you can use that in a small area and stop, say, a massive cavalry unit. But yeah, it's kind of impressive on how historically accurate this is and pretty much on all the other things about it. But as well, I surely do hope they actually make a second one. If you guys support me, let me know down in the comments below. Like this video if you want to see more about it. As well, if you guys want me to talk any more about this video game and anything I missed in here, please also leave the comments down below. As well, guys, it's great to be back, and hopefully we can actually see more about this game. Anyways, guys, have a good day.